Morning, everybody.
Good morning. How are you all?
Well, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. I actually accidentally put it on my calendar for an hour before. So I've just been sitting just in the event that it was one of those meetings that if I sign off and sign back in, I would not have a spot.
Oh, well, we are excited about you being here, and thank you for your interest.
I am
Gave,
excited
gave
to
you time to
be here.
practice.
That's
It
awesome.
definitely does. So when you spoke, I was like, oh, okay, I'm here.
And I
Good morning,
see,
Miss Marcia. Hi,
good,
Miss Shirley.
good morning, good morning. I see our fearless leader, Matt White, the AFC president. I love the background. Every time I say it, but I do. I got to get a cool background.
Every time I say I'll send it to you, and I always forget. So
I
I'm
know.
going to do that right now before I forget again.
That is a nice background, though.
Nice background. It looks so cool when I see it on the screen behind Matt. Love it.
There's that one too, the professional.
No, I like the one you had previously, the big AFC with the logo. I really like, yeah. It just looks so professional. I love it.
It's all about subtlety.
It's always interesting to me what you tend to gravitate toward, you know. I like the big and bold in that sense. All right, everybody, it looks like it is exactly 11 o'clock. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, I want to thank you all for joining us this morning for part 2 of our Returning Together webinar series. This morning, our moderator is Elizabeth Shelby. Elizabeth has been the Career Pathways Coordinator at Hillsborough Community College since 2019. She has a master's degree in education with emphasis in curriculum and instruction. She has a certification in cultural response pedagogy. And what I find most interesting is that when she moved to the state of Florida, she served as the Education Outreach Advisor for the Seminole Tribe of Florida. I find that so interesting, Elizabeth. I want to hear more about that at some point. This concept for Returning Together came to AFC because of a conversation that Elizabeth had with Jamie Pagels. Jamie is the Region 4 Director from Pasco Hernando State College, and they started a conversation, and I'll probably turn it over to Elizabeth and let her give you a little bit more information before she introduces our panelists this morning. But suffice it to say, they thought enough of us, of our system, of you as employees, valued employees, that they really wanted to start a conversation for our administrators, for our HR administrators, and for the frontline staff to talk about the unknowns, to talk about our feelings and thoughts, and to share information about COVID-19 and how we're going to return to our campuses this fall. So at this point, I want to turn it over to Elizabeth, and I want to again say thank you, Elizabeth, for reaching out and thinking enough about how this was going to impact us, our psyche, as well as our physical beings, to say, can we have a conversation about this and talk about it more? So everybody, Elizabeth Shelby.
Thank you so much, Marcia. I appreciate it. Thank you. I also want to say thank you again to Matt White, our AFC president, for allowing the opportunity for us to be able to have the conversations today. Jamie and I began to work together a few months ago because I started to engage in the webinars that AFC were offering when we all started this journey of working from home. And the conversations in the webinars were very wonderful. They were centered around mental health, wellness, for persons for the first time who were working from home, and us being able as practitioners to be able to support our students and also support ourselves as well. So when those conversations came about, I really paid attention to the comments that practitioners were putting in the chat. And I saw persons indicating that they were having some issues with, the transition, with isolation, but then also having a moment of gratitude because of the resources that was being accessible for individuals who were working from home, but also supporting students too. But then it caused me to think we've got something going on now for us to be able to work with the capacity of being at home. But what are we going to do when we return to work from being at home for the last 3 or 4 months? And what does that look like in this new norm amidst a pandemic that we all globally had no idea was going to come down the pike? And the fall semester is fastly approaching. And now we're getting in a position where colleges and universities, pre-K, K through 12 programming is beginning to open. And now what does returning together really look like amidst of a pandemic, and then we've been at home for the last couple of months? So professionally, some of us look, well put together from the waist up. And if some of us stand up now, we probably have on shorts or still have on slippers. And so now we're going to be making the transition of going back to the offices and then also supporting our team as well as supporting our students while we're still trying to take care of ourselves. So when we thought about the series, we thought about how does this look from the view of an administrator? What role does HR play in this new world that we have now? And what does it really look like for the frontline staff? Because I'm a frontline staff person as well, and what my journey will now look like when I'm engaging with my students and my colleagues amongst a pandemic. So that's how these conversations came about. And then again, I thank you for AVFC for providing the opportunity for us to have these meaningful conversations, these dialogues between our 28 colleges. So with that, I'll digress and I will introduce our panelists for today. We have Dr. Amy Bosley. Dr. Amy Bosley is proud to work with the Aspen Prize-winning Valencia College, where she has served students at the community college mission in a variety of capacities, most recently as Vice President of Organizational Development and Human Resources. In this role, Amy is responsible for traditional human resources functions, which includes recruitment, employment responsibilities, traditional human resources functions, benefits, records, and information systems, as well as organizational development, efforts such as organizational design and development, total rewards, workforce planning, employee development, and communication, and Valencia's Collaborative Design Center. A part of the Valencia community for over 20 years, Amy's career began as a part-time faculty member and a dual enrollment instructor at Valencia's East Campus Communications Department. After moving to a full-time teaching position, Amy earned tenure in 2003 and developed a myriad of teaching modalities and strategies to increase student access and student success in the communications discipline. Amy served as the president of the College-wide Faculty Association and was awarded the Sue Vazadar Endowed Chair in Communication to advance the college's work in online learning. She continues to teach as a part-time faculty member in both the communications and business disciplines. Additionally, Amy is an Aspen Presidential Fellow and enjoys serving as a League for Innovation member college representative, as a member of the Chair Academy Practitioner Board, and as a chair of the Central Florida Victim Service Center Advisory Board. Again, welcome, Dr. Amy Bosley. Additionally, we have Susan Bronstein. Susan is the Chief Human Resource Organization Development Officer for the Florida Southwestern State College. Susan received her MBA from the State University of Buffalo. Susan has over 35 years experience in human resource management, the last 17 in higher education. Prior to relocating to Florida, she served as the Executive Director of Human Resources and College-wide Safety at State University of New York, Jamestown Community College. There, she was responsible for leading and directing the college's human resources programs and leading safety and security functions. Prior to that, Bronstein worked in healthcare human resource management and was an adjunct professor at State University of New York in Buffalo. Susan, welcome. Thank you so much. We do have an additional panelist that was to join us today, Daryl Clark. Marcia, did we get a chance to see if Daryl's going to be in?
He is. Daryl is here.
Okay, good morning. And last but not least, I will introduce Daryl Clark. Daryl Clark is the current Chief Human Resource Officer for Pasco Hernando State College. He's a native Floridian, born and raised in Miami, a proud alum of the University of South Florida, where he completed his bachelor's degree in sociology, followed by a master's degree from Nova Southeastern University, majoring in employment law. He has an 18-year HR practitioner. He is an 18-year HR practitioner with previous experience at both FedEx and the Pasco County School District. Being a former athlete, he enjoys participating and watching all sports, in addition to fine dining, home cooking, and grilling, home improvement projects, and traveling, both domestic and international. Daryl also serves as the current treasurer for HR Tampa, which is the local chapter for the Society for Human Resources Management. Again, thank you for all of our panelists who has decided to have conversations with us today so we can kind of get an understanding of some of the charges or challenges and opportunities that HR departments are now faced with because of COVID-19 and how it's had an impact on our colleges and being able to, one, ensure the safety of our students, but also taking care of our employees as well. And so for the panelists, we'll begin with a question centered around fall 2020 is approaching. Many of us will be returning to our campuses to receive our students within less than a month. And with that being said, from your perspective, amidst the pandemic that we are having right now, and then the cases that are increasing throughout the state of Florida, again, from your perspective, when is the right time for employees to return, and how do you determine who should return, and how do you get that information out to the employees as well? Susan, we'll start with you.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Florida Southwestern actually entered stage 2. We have a 3-stage return to campus plan this past Monday. And we did a soft opening for our students to be on campus. And I would say that the planning and the number of voices that needed to be heard was done through what we called our Reconnect team, which was made up of a variety of leaders across the college. And then we also had what we called an I3 committee, which was pretty much the faculty side of the house, planning for different modalities for when students return. And I think the key to the success of it, not that we aren't all feeling the anxiety of being back on campus and knowing that we're interfacing with more folks, but the key was really getting main constituents across the college community to come together and just talk through things from a safety perspective, from a mental health perspective, from a, needing to get back into a normal routine of going to work every day and knowing what you're going to face when you get to work. And so some of our employees have been on campus throughout this time. Our maintenance folks, our IT folks, some of our essential personnel. And we took a lot of tips from them on what was going to, help make people feel more comfortable. Everything that you see in your local grocery stores, the distancing signage, the reminders to hand wash, the plexiglass, I mean, all those, engineering controls to make the workplace safer. But also doing a lot of communicating. Communicate, and listen. And we incorporated feedback every opportunity that we could. And so now we're at that place where individuals are coming back in a staggered fashion. We did not know what our student load would be when we opened on Monday, but it was very manageable. Our students have gotten savvy to, our chat function on our website, email, the Zooms, everything that technology can bring to help, make everyone feel more comfortable.
All right. Thank you so much. Dr. Bosley.
Sure. Like you all, we are doing our very best to keep our top priorities, which are the health and safety of our students and employees and the continuity of our students' learning. And those have been our priorities. Actually, we went back and looked at some records since March 2nd, which was the very first meeting we had before spring break on what was then called the coronavirus. Those two priorities have remained our very, very singular focus. Valencia does have a pretty conservative return plan. We're just going to be entering our phase 2 of operations on August 1st, which just brings back faculty and students in programs that just simply cannot be taught or assessed in a virtual environment. We think about this almost as a fixed pie of resources. There's only a fixed number of spaces, so to speak, on site because we have limited, of course, supply issues with PPE and other kinds of cleaning supplies. Also, you're thinking about the impact of contact tracing and exposure. So we've thought about it as kind of a fixed resource, and we want every one of those resources, those spaces on site to go to a student or to a faculty member so that our students can ensure the continuity of their learning, which leaves the very large majority of us working remotely. So our human resources team, we're student affairs, business operations and finance, we're all remote at least through the end of the year so that all of those spaces can be devoted to students and to the faculty and reduce the exposure for those who do have to be on site, just reducing the number of people that they will encounter. The last thing that I'll just add is that all along we've been recognizing and saying to our colleagues that organizational readiness to return is very different than individual readiness to return. And that because the organization is ready to take the next step doesn't mean that an individual is ready. We are now at the point where the rubber meets the road on that promise, where we've got employees making decisions about school for their children in the fall, where people are saying, I don't feel ready. I do have concerns. And so being able to live up to that statement is now our biggest calling as a senior leadership team to be able to make that real and continue to support the employees, continue to support the students, but also recognize that our decision to be ready isn't the same as individuals.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bosley. Daryl?
Yes, thank you very much. And again, thanks for inviting us to attend today's meeting. I will say that at PHSC, we're in a similar situation as with Florida Southwest and Valencia. Obviously, being the HR council, we meet regularly to bounce a lot of these ideas off of each other. At PHSC, as with most colleges, we've already moved to fully online format for those programs that can be taught online for the fall semester. For those programs that cannot be taught online, then those individual programs have to work with the varying accrediting bodies to make sure that they meet certain criteria in order to be able to fulfill those essential the essential needs of the program, i.e. workforce programs. If you're looking at some of the nursing programs, et cetera, they're still looking for guidance from those accrediting institutions. In addition to that, PHSC is looking at a staggered approach as well. We've moved into our phase 2 approach, but that staggered approach is more fluid in nature, given the fact that you do have situations, as Amy alluded to, where you have employees who are, in addition to balancing their normal day-to-day responsibilities, doing so remotely, are also being asked to do homeschooling while doing that as well. And if you can imagine how difficult that can be, the direction that I've been providing to our management team here is that there needs to be a certain level of flexibility between both our employee group as well as our manager group. So both parties need to be flexible in this regard. We have open lines of communication across the board to obviously make sure that we maximize employee safety, that we also understand that managers do have flexibilities to maintain operations as well. And obviously making sure that we have that continuing operations in place. So overall, we're just like every other institution, every other agency, every other employer, where we're being flexible, where we're listening to our employees, where we will work with the employees on an individualized basis, but also have an expectation that our employees will be flexible with us as well so that we can navigate these uncertain times.
Thank you so much, Daryl. It really sounds as if with the responses to what has occurred with our pandemic that, you know, we're all being affected, is just that communication piece between employees as well as students. So Susan, could you speak a little bit more in relation to, you know, you guys have a Voices Reconnecting, I3 committee. Were there any surveys that was developed to gather information so that there could be an educated way to be able to move forward from an HR standpoint with returning employees back to work as well as students? And from that survey, what seemed to be the common theme from a survey that was presented to staff and/or students?
Yes, we did survey. We surveyed staff and faculty, and we surveyed our students. You know, this was all while we were in stage one, where we were mostly remote. We put out questionnaires about, you know, what's your feeling about coming back? What would it take to make you feel comfortable on campus again? What are your concerns regarding being on campus? And on the student side, it was similar questions, but then also questions about how would you feel comfortable returning? Would you be online? Would you be comfortable a combination of online and in the classroom? What are your concerns from being in a classroom setting? And it was the two sets of surveys that informed much of what we did through our early planning stages, recognizing that a lot of those physical barriers, like the plexiglass, something in the classroom where the podium, where the faculty member stands, putting plexiglass by the podiums, both on the student side and the faculty side, knowing that that would create a sense of comfort, that there's, you know, a protective measure being taken. A lot of the information that we learned from our surveys informed us about how much we needed to communicate and the various ways that we needed to communicate. It was email, it was town halls, it was texting, setting up, you know, a one-stop shop for our messaging on our COVID alert page, and repeatedly driving people to that page for the latest updates. Our president did, you know, informational sessions as well. All of our senior team was out there in front of everyone, talking and gathering information. And so that data was critical in helping formulate the two different committees that worked, one on the faculty side to move the classroom management piece into a combination of modalities, and then on the staff side, knowing that staff would be back before faculty would be, because we didn't have any classes that were campus-based through summer B. And that's only in our health professions area, where we needed to have ground classes for some of our health professions to graduate. So gathering that data sharing the input. We shared back what we learned. I think that helped create a sense of transparency and helped create trust in the steps that the leadership was taking.
Thank you so much, Susan. Daryl, same question for you.
Yes, ma'am. So we also completed a survey as well, gathered some information across the board from our overall constituents. And, it follows the same guidelines, some of the same guidelines that Susan outlined, where we wanted to gauge the concerns of our employees, our employee group, but also make sure that we gather information around how we should proceed moving forward. Obviously their comfort levels, etc. I don't think we ever got the results from our survey as of yet. We're still compiling that, but we did share that out, I believe, in May. So it was in our phase 1 or prior to our phase 1 back in May when that survey went out to all of our employee groups. Once we've already started into to phase back into our returning to campus over at PHSC. However, we do have, again, it's a fluid operation. We are looking to, to obviously observe the numbers that we're getting from our state and local municipalities as it relates to contagion rates and things of that nature. And then those numbers are going to drive our decision making moving forward.
Okay. Thank you so much, Daryl. This question will be for all of the panelists. It seems to be a common theme of, really going back to what was discussed last week when we were speaking with the leaders of the colleges, people first, and how do we best wrap services around faculty, staff, as well as the students to ensure that their mental health needs are being taken care of, their academic needs are being taken care of. Could each of you speak to some of the resources that faculty, staff, as well as students are able to access in relation to mental health? When we began the journey of working at home, there were a plethora of webinars that came out to ensure that individuals were taking care of their personal needs, mentally as well as physically. So we're at this stage where we're kind of getting closer to going back to work. What are some of the things that are being offered at your respective institutions in relation to HR support with mental health, wellness, physical wellness, things of that nature? Amy?
I'll start. So this is just a huge concern for all of us in the human resources profession. We talk about this in our calls together. This is just it's really taxing. And then so just the COVID issue, working remotely, teaching your children, having your children at home without places for them to go. Then when you layer on the race and social justice conversation and issues that are in our country and in our community, all of that is just an unbelievable load for each of our colleagues to carry. So I think providing all the resources you would expect for us to provide, right? The employee assistance programs, resources for students in terms of counseling, but then going a little bit further with that to provide some group kind of therapy, kind of counseling sessions. We have a Peace and Justice Institute at Valencia who has been leading some healing circles and conversation circles. But one of the things that I just want to add to what Susan and Darrell offered a moment ago in terms of communication that I think really is important here as well, is that making sure our leaders all the way through the organization are well informed and well supported translates in our experience to employees being well supported and heard and cared for. And so I think not missing that critical opportunity to make sure leaders have information first, they're well informed, they have resources to deploy in their own unique settings, that they have partnerships with their human resource colleagues to provide department-specific responses, I just think is really critical in this. It's really important, of course, to get to every employee, but we can't really ensure a consistent experience for every employee until we have made sure that those leaders are really well informed and feel cared for themselves. So I think in addition to EAP and those sorts of resources, ensuring that our leaders are well supported helps, I think, with the mental health concerns that we may be experiencing.
Thank you so much, Amy. Susan.
Our response was really based on listening and hearing what people were saying. And we put together, we had some individuals that helped us put together some workshops on, parenting while you're working. We had a lot of opportunity to talk about how you're feeling in this period of uncertainty. We offered multiple virtual trainings that focused on those kinds of needs. And right before we started stage 2, towards the end of June through the first week of July, we offered a series of workshops on turning the corner and returning to work. Mm-hmm. Those were extremely well attended, very well received. I'm going to probably schedule a few more of them because now it's real. Yeah. Monday they were here and they were working, so it wasn't talking about it. So I think once this week settles down, I think I'll be offering a series of that. But it is, as Amy said, just to give people the opportunity to share how they're feeling and recognize you're not alone. I think, the isolation of being away from your colleagues, even though you're Zooming yourself silly, it's not the same as when you're face to face and you can have those casual in the moment conversations. So for us, it was really trying to give them the support in addition to the EAP and, that kind of stuff. But it was really a lot of those just workshop opportunities, not so much trainings. They were just workshop opportunities to get together and share.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan. Daryl, same question.
Absolutely. So as Amy alluded to, with all the things that she's mentioned, at PHSC, this could not have come at a more perfect time. And I say that obviously jokingly. This is in addition to all of the other eventualities that could have occurred, we're also in the midst of doing an ERP rollout. So you're trying to do that. Typically, you have to be on hand when you're doing an ERP rollout, and we're doing that and still staying on pace, but doing so remotely. So in addition to all the other things that our employee groups have to be concerned with, they also have in the back of their mind that, hey, the way we conduct business today, the way we teach our students, the way our students interact with us, the way our employees interact with us, all of that is going to change within the upcoming months. So how do we better prepare them for those pieces? As it relates to making sure that the employees have support, obviously there's no one size fits all. So you have to, take a lot of these situations on a case-by-case basis. EAP being one option, which is something that is more voluntary. It can be offered. I cannot force that upon an employee. But however, other avenues that can be considered, if appropriate, would be those items like FMLA, if it's appropriate, if you're looking at expanded ADA accommodations, reasonable accommodations, which can be outside of ADA, if an employee has an accommodation that they feel will allow them to perform the essential functions of their jobs, still maintain productivity and the like, or what have you. All of those pieces are items that we want to make available to our employee group. The unfortunate piece there is that really when it comes to accommodations, FMLA, you really can't do a lot until an employee notifies you that there is an underlying problem or underlying concern. So the biggest thing that I can give to the employee group would be to make sure that the lines of communication are open, not only between your direct reporting manager, but also making sure that the line communications are open with your respective HR professional as well, because especially when it gets into the area of divulging health information and things of that nature. So definitely make sure you communicate, over communicate, so that those situations can be addressed timely and appropriately. Not communicating those items to your appropriate managers will most likely not come as a benefit to the individual employee. And we would help. I always look at some things in hindsight. We get it in HR. We get a chance to Monday morning quarterback a lot. So when you see an employee that a situation has developed where an employee is having some issues, and the issues are you're at the tail end of those issues, you oftentimes try to go back and say, is there anything that we could have done to change that particular situation, to change the behavior, the situation, etc. So if anything that can come of this discussion, I would say make sure the employees are communicating with their direct reporting manager and or others who they feel are trusted individuals that can help navigate these uncertain times.
Thank you so much, Daryl. Dr. Bosley, you mentioned in your response ensuring that leadership were in the position of one taking care of themselves. And last week when we had our first session, the leaders discussed, people first and some of the things that they did as a leadership team to ensure that those individuals were being supported, meaning leadership team. There's a question that came from the chat that says, Dr. Bosley, what are some specific steps your institution help leadership feel supported and informed? You did move forward and respond to it in chat, but if you can address this with the group.
Sure. It's a crazy time, and people are working in ways and at times when they've never worked before. Any one of the issues that we're facing right now would be a showstopper for us. Think about the things that are going on with our international students right now, right? That's like just an unbelievable issue. The race and social justice conversations, the COVID diagnosis, all of this, these are monumental issues, and they feel like they are just waves that kind of keep crashing over us that we've got to kind of pick up and respond to. So we've done a number of things. I did post a couple in the chat, like our ODHR team did an outreach to every supervisor at the college. We booked 30-minute conversations. Most of them ended up being an hour and 30 minutes, where a member of our team just reached out to a supervisor and said, how are you? What do you need? How are your team members doing? What's working, what's not working? And then we followed up to respond to their very unique needs and requests. We've also just have had a lot of messages coming from our president and from our senior leadership team about the need for self-care, that taking time off is really critical, especially at a time when you feel like you can't walk away. Right? The email's always here. It's always pinging and dinging, and it's generally somewhere in your home that you can't get away from it. And so I'm just really having to help people plan that in very direct ways that you might not think that you have to, right? But like, how are you going to take care of yourself this week? What is your plan of action? When are you going to take time off? And in general, offering things like meditation and I've got a team member on the ODHR team that does a yoga class 2 times a week for our whole team, and we get on Zoom, and so it's providing, I think, the space and time for those kinds of experiences and time away from work that are really symbols to people. I also just think it's really critical that senior leadership takes a break, and that they make that well known, that they are public about being off and they mean it. And they're not responding at all hours of the night. Like, our teams don't feel like they can take a break until they watch us take a break. So I think that's another critical issue. And then one other thing that we did that I think has been really important from kind of total self-care is we actually shifted very strategically and intentionally out of crisis mode, where we put together new principles for how we would communicate when we are not in a crisis. So we don't send any college-wide emails after 6 p.m. or on the weekends. Right. So we just kind of started setting up what is it like now, so that people could feel a discernible difference, because we can't operate in crisis. It's really a couple weeks that people can mentally operate in crisis, and here we are 4 months later with new waves crashing every day.
Exactly. Susan and Daryl, Amy did give some specifics on how leadership is being supported via HR. Is there anything unique to your institutions that you implemented for your leadership team or made offered to your leadership team? Susan?
What our leadership team did was basically at the executive council level, we went into humor mode, and that's the best way I can describe it. We did competitions on goofy Zoom backgrounds. We did little competitions on, trivia. We shared band and favorite pop rock and all that stuff. I mean, we got silly. And I will take credit for leading the silliness. I have have it here. I have my face mask.
Nice.
So, we just injected a lot of humor, and we gave ourselves permission to be radically forgiving of ourselves, and recognize that nobody on that team is going to function if we're not sleeping at night. A lot of personal check-ins with each other, and really just, it's changed the, I would say the entire culture at the top, that it's become, not that it was contentious ever, but it's just so much more collaborative and supportive, and we've really embraced humor. And that's probably the most significant difference, is that we're all, any pretense of, that I'm in my position now, totally went away, and we engaged in radical silliness on a regular basis.
Thank you. And that's a wonderful mask. I really like the mask as well. Daryl?
Yes, ma'am. So we are in a similar situation. Number one, the leadership team at PHSC, we meet regularly. A lot of the direction that we get, is in the culture is set by the president of the college. So, our president makes, he takes time to make sure that he checks in on everyone just to see how they're doing, to find out what's going on in their world, just to see how, what support is needed. And then obviously a cross-functional collaborative approach between departments as well. Right now, I think the benefit for PHSC is because of the ERP, rollout that we're working on, or the implementation that we're in. We're already in that situation where we can't really disengage because we're in it. Like you have to stay on time, on budget, and do so while working remotely. So we're kind of in a unique situation, or perfect timing, where we're able to collaborate and speak with people all the time. Part of the reason why I am not sharing my camera this morning is because of that, because I literally rolled out of bed this morning at 7:30, and I had a meeting first thing in the morning. So I am not the most, I'm not in an appropriate setting at this point. But in addition to just having those meetings and those interactions, we do take time, to try to talk about it. So before we do things, we kind of just debrief. In the morning, people talk about their pets and their cats and their families, and how their families are doing, prior to us diving into the data that we have to do on literally every single day. When we have early morning calls, and then end of day calls, and then your weekly calls, and then on top of that, your leadership calls. And, I think most of us will all say that at a certain point, you've become a bit, I don't want to say tired, but you have become a bit zoomed out at this point. Or between Zoom and Microsoft Teams, you're doing so much where it's like, oh my God, can I just get a break from all of these meetings or what have you? So, we just try to keep keep everyone's spirit alive, basically keep spirits up. And, there are some talks that we currently have in play not only from the leadership team, but also what we can do across the board with the college to see what we can do to keep the spirits high as we roll into the fall semester, because we know it's going to be challenging. And because we know it's going to be challenging, what is our plan? We don't want to be developing a plan after the fact when you now have more issues. So that's our approach.
Thank you so much, Daryl. And it's the overall theme there just sounds like, you know, having a plan and having that open communication and ensure that the culture of the employees is being protected, because there's a new culture that's developed because of the pandemic that we're currently in. We are approaching, again, reopening the schools. Some of our colleges will remain, you know, online, but you will have faculty, staff coming back to the campuses. And with that being said, what are some of the things being put in place in the event that there's a faculty member or a staff person, or that faculty member or that staff person has a family member who ends up with COVID-19 and that person is a caretaker for them? What are some of the things that you've put in place at your own institution centered around FMLA and then the Families First Coronavirus Response Act? And how's that kind of changing some of your policies and procedures at your own institutions to support those families or that individual that may end up being exposed and having COVID-19 as we return back to this new norm on our campuses? Susan, we'll start with you.
Basically, we have 2 of our HR team dedicated specifically to working these cases together from a FMLA perspective as well as an ADA perspective. And so these 2 team members are formulating or have formulated a case management approach, no different really than what we would utilize regularly for ADA or FMLA requests. We're in the course of doing those informational sessions and town hall meetings, we were very forthright in telling people their rights under that. We did presentations to supervisors so that supervisors would understand what employee rights were. And then we also did a presentation to the staff to make sure that everyone understood what benefits were available to them under those 2 regulations in the Families First Coronavirus Act. We really, in terms of our HR policies, for those 2 specific reasons, we're just following existing protocol and it's working very well. We haven't found that we needed to change anything relative to the accommodation or to the FMLA process. It's working for us so far. And you know, again, the hinge on that was just communication and education of our supervisors. Because, you know, obviously they're frustrated in how do I manage my department on a half schedule with some people at home and some people here, and then what do I do when the person I wanted here can't be here and has to be home? And so it's been a lot of talking through individual one-on-one. Our 2 individuals that are managing this, just, you know, constant communication with supervisors. You know, I think that collectively they all have our cell phones on speed dial because we get questions at various times during the day and during the evening and weekends. So it's just making sure that the supervisors understand we're here to support them, and then to make sure that senior leadership had a really good understanding of the requirements of those 2 laws so that they could address concerns when their supervisors or the supervisors would, you know, bounce questions up to them. So it's just been a lot of open communication, Zoom meetings on the spot to, you know, to deal with an issue and just, you know, do our best to support the supervisor, but at the same time support the employee because they're going through it at the moment.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Daryl, same question.
Absolutely. So you do have to have some understanding of the employee situation and be flexible in that regard. Again, that's going to be a running thread, running theme from me is, flexibility on behalf of not only the employer, but also the employee. In situations like that, where an employee is the caregiver of someone who may be sick, or an individual who may have contracted COVID-19, obviously, as a college, we have to make sure that we take our own precautions. We have to make sure that we do the contact tracing as well. That currently resides with both HR, but also with our safety and security team as well, because they're monitoring the various campuses to make sure that that we are able to notify employees if they've come in contact with an individual who may be potentially positive. And in addition to that, make sure that they understand what the CDC guidelines are as far as self-quarantining, as far as the number of tests that need to be returned negative prior to returning to any normal operations or returning to campus. So just, again, just communication, just piggybacking off of some of the same things that Susan mentioned, where you work with the employee, you contact trace, you enter the data in there to try to make sure that you can see how many employees we have there. You still maintain a certain level, a high level of confidentiality. We do share data with everyone at the college. However, we don't. We're very cautious about sharing names of the employee, basically, because you never know if an employee wants to have that information out there, and it's actually incumbent upon us in HR to ensure that an employee's information, that the employee information or name isn't coming from us. Now, an employee may notify their friends at the school, but that's their information. They can do that. However, that information would normally necessarily come from HR. We'll just share the number of cases, impacted campus, impacted department, and so on and so forth. And here is the recommendations that we're providing moving forward, given the fact that there may have been some contact with an individual that is potentially positive. So just kind of having those measures in place currently is helping us as a college, and we've been lucky thus far to not have any serious issues thus far.
Thank you, Daryl. Dr. Bosley?
Just to add a little bit to what Susan and Darrell have shared, this is just unbelievably complex. And we've got like matrices that go on for days of all the possible permutations of what could be occurring. It's just incredibly complex. And the guidance and the rule that's come out regarding EFMLA and emergency paid leave, like Susan, we're just factoring those into our regular process, but it's figuring out, what does the employee qualify for? What do we want to do? We can always be more generous than the law requires. So what's the right thing to do? But as Darrell said, right, these are, every single one is just the most complex case. There's no easy case. And we're balancing this desire for rendering a very personal response to an individual who's really going through a very, very difficult time, with being mindful of consistency and equity and treating people in a similar way. And I think HR always struggles there. We're always struggling between those two poles, and they are not mutually exclusive, right? Certainly we know from our work the differences between equality and equity. We know that we can render a personal response and be equitable, but that's a really hard thing for our teams to kind of wrap their minds around and make the best decisions possible. So I think from kind of a general response, acknowledging for everyone, including the employee and the supervisor, this is really tough. It's really complicated, and we're going to do our very best to be as supportive and generous as we can. That feels right to me. That feels better to me than saying no, we can't help you. But it also opens the door to make sure that we've got some good oversight in reviewing our decisions to ensure that we are treating people in an equitable way. The only thing I just wanted to add to Valencia's response, like Susan, we've got a person on our team that we've designated as a COVID case manager, something I never thought Valencia would have. But this is a person who's deeply trained in FERPA and in HIPAA and in contact tracing, all of this. So we have a single point of contact for the college, students and employees alike. And we're doing all of the contact tracing, the close contacts, the quarantining, the releasing from quarantine, the clearance to go back to work, all these things that we just never imagined that we would do, balanced with the fact that we have students and employees who are ill all the time. And we know how to handle it. It's just at this time, it feels like it's, it's just kind of overwhelming. So we've developed some emergency continuity of instruction plans we've been developed with our faculty so that we ensure that we've got plans in case somebody does become ill. We've got emergency substitution plans. We're really trying to think through those contingencies in preparation for the fall, knowing that we went from 4 months of having 0 cases on site to having 7 in one weekend. Right? It just lit on fire when the state lit on fire. And so, I think the fall is it's scary to think about how we're going to make it through, but I know we will. We've made it this far. I think it just goes back to the flexibility, the individual response, the grace, and being as generous as we can possibly be.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bosley. It seems like there's been an overarching theme with just leading with empathy in ensuring that we are positioning ourselves, that resiliency can occur for staff members as well as our students by doing check-ins, self-care, being flexible, radical silliness. That sounds like a t-shirt, as well as making sure that we have communication. I'm thinking about that now, that radical silliness, we might be able to market that. So just ensuring that we're taking care of each other as we're moving to be about the business of the students. So we have a few minutes before our session concludes. So for each of our panelists, reviewing and reflecting over the last 4 months, what are 2 key lessons that you've learned during this time frame? 2 key lessons. And we will leave Daryl, the only gentleman on our panel. He will be our last person that will respond. We'll start with you, Susan.
Oh, that's a tough question because I think I've learned a lot more than 2. And I'm trying to think of what would be the top one. I think I was talking with my team about this, and I don't know if this is a lesson learned or a recognition that HR is now probably positioned within our institution to be a greater business partner than perhaps ever we have. We're all feeling the incredible sense of responsibility that we lead this organization. I don't mean as leader, I'm not talking lead at the top, but we have a huge opportunity to lead where the emotion might go, to lead where the anxiety might go, and to be that voice of reason and calm and assistance and help. So I think a takeaway for me is that how we've responded, and I don't know that we necessarily planned, because as Amy said, we were kind of like, I felt like somebody had put my feet on ice and I was just running and not going anywhere for quite a while until I finally, our gears kicked in. So I'm not sure that this was thoughtful on our part, which is maybe not the right thing to say, but it's honest. We just reacted in our best selves. And I think that really gave our team, our collective HR team, as we supported each other, the ability to really be there, be really present and mindful of every conversation we had and the potential to impact someone positively as a result of that. So I think that's one. Another is to breathe, because you are so caught up in the 999 million immediate details, the 22 million that are waiting, and the unknown beyond that. And you focus, you're in that space, and you have to give yourself that so that you can be effective. And that's from, I would say a personal level, that, give yourself the time to just stop and breathe.
Thank you, Susan. Dr. Bosley?
I have 2, I'm thinking about this, 2 key takeaways. One is doing the right thing is the right thing. And so just do the right thing, right? Listen to the person who is in front of you, understand them, and do the very best you can for them. Doing the right thing is absolutely the right thing. The other is kind of a corollary to that, and that is this is one that I hope we continue to take with us after this, but don't build systems for the 1 or 2% of people who are going to take advantage. Build the systems for the 99% of people who are good and committed and hardworking and honest, and deal with the 1 or 2% who take advantage. There will be someone. We have 6,000 employees. Somebody is going to. We can handle it. But it's scary to leap out and say, we just sent a message to all of our employees on Monday that said, we support your choice as a parent for your child's educational decisions for the fall. We trust your judgment as a parent, and we will work with you on your schedule so that you can do right. So we're scared, like we're nervous. Like, what if that means nobody can work on Monday at 8? We'll get through it. It's going to be all right. So build systems for the 98, 99%.
Thank you. And Daryl?
Absolutely. I don't know if I can, Amy kind of stole my thunder a little bit there. But I will say that, to her point, making, there's no perfect way to deal with any of this. So I have a saying that I say always, I have no problem making the best decision armed with the best information that I have at that time. So if this information changes over time, if it changes within an hour, within a day, then my decision may change with that as well. Or the direction that we're providing or the advice that we're providing may all change accordingly. So that's probably the best advice that I can give, not only employees, but also managers, is because this thing is ever changing, that we all have to be pliable and understanding to an extent that as the information changes, so does the experience, so does the decisions, the directions, and so on and so forth, the advice. So as an employee, just being pliable and open to those changes as they occur, because if we continue to see spikes, the decision that I've provided 2 days ago is not going to be the same decision I'm going to provide next Monday. So that's probably the biggest thing that I have. I don't know if that's like really a two-pronged approach there. The other one would just be, as employees, all of us be flexible and understanding. Have that certain level of understanding and, understand that we're all human. In my former life at FedEx, we used to have this saying with HR is that, because you're dealing with employee relations and all of these other factors, everybody comes to HR oftentimes when, you dump a lot of your negativity on HR. So we used to have our senior levels come to us and say, well, what are you doing in HR to offload that? Because we're trained to not pass that on to others. I have to be able to absorb a lot of that and not pass that on to the next person that I have a discussion with, the next manager, the next employee. So I could have been extremely heated or in a passionate discussion with someone else. And when another employee pick up the phone and call me, I have to be able to put that to the side and say, well, how can I assist you? And not have an attitude and not, have it come across like I have an attitude. So being able to pass that along to all of our employees so that you can improve the overall work environment during these difficult times will be a benefit as well. Just be understanding and understand that the decisions can change from, hour to hour, day to day, week to week, etc.
Thank you so much. I want to again say thank you to each of our panelists as well as our guests for joining us today. It is a few minutes after the 12 o'clock hour. So we will conclude the session for today. Just be mindful that our next session is going to be July 21st, which is next Tuesday. We'll be having discussions with frontline staff and how this will impact them when they're returning back to their respective sites. So if there's some things that we can take away from today, since we're in the business of serving each other, meaning staff, faculty, and our students, I'll sum up what Susan, Amy, and Daryl said. If we keep these things in mind, we'll be okay returning together. Reacting in our best selves, be pliable, and the right thing is just the right thing. Thank you so much for being with us today. We look forward to seeing you hopefully next week. Be well and take care of yourself. Don't forget to breathe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.